The year is 1919. Inside the Palace of Versailles, a delegation of representatives from 32 different countries, including Britain, France and America, signed a treaty which would formally end the First World War. This war, which was started by the assassination of the Austrian Duke Franz Ferdinand, had ravaged Europe for the last 4 years. The Great War saw the destruction of 3 of Europe's most powerful empires. Their territorial integrity were now jeopardized as smaller ethnic groups, communists, and other upcoming powers carved their own states from the wilting political order, opening old wounds and experimenting with new ways of governing. This is the first installment in a 6-part series on the Second Great War. Subscribe so you don't miss the others. With the Great War over, the surviving Entente powers of Britain, France, Italy and the USA could now enforce their vision for Europe and the rest of the world. Immediately after the war ended, revolution in the form of extreme communist uprisings, mimicking those of the previous year in Russia, had ignited Berlin into vicious conflict. The new Weimar Republic, led by Friedrich Ebert, relied on the erratic Freikorps, whose ranks had been bolstered by disenfranchised veterans of the war, to put down these revolts. One of these divisions, led by the early Wolfgang Kapp, staged a coup d'etat against the Weimar Republic to restore the Kaiser to his throne 1 year later in 1920. This was only stopped by the workers in Berlin going on strike and stopping the plot in its tracks. Meanwhile, in the land which was once the Habsburg Empire, a major yet weak ally of Germany in the war, many different ethnic groups formed their own nation-states, and already existing ones, like the Kingdom of Serbia, Romania and Italy, all attempted to take their rightful territory from the crumbling Austrian Empire. Romania, just 2 days after the November armistice, invaded the vulnerable new state of Hungary. Its armies pushed deep into the Hungarian heartland. Just a month later, the new country of Czechoslovakia also sensed the Hungarian weakness and invaded in December. By March 1919, the south of Hungary was occupied, and the Romanian advance had not slowed down. Communists in Hungary declared the Hungarian Soviet Republic, whose aim was to unite with the USSR. This only made Hungary's remaining supporters in the Entente nations distance themselves, and in response gave the Romanians, Slovaks and Serbs a greater casus belli against Hungary. By August 4th, the communist government had fled to Austria and was replaced. That day, Romania took the capital of Budapest. In November, after a long occupation, Romanian troops retreated out of the country, and the Hungarian army, led by Miklos Horthy, occupied the capital. The Treaty of Trianon was signed, which solidified the borders of the post-Austrian nations. Hungary was stripped of 70% of its pre-war territory. At the same time, the White Terror in Hungary, led by paramilitary forces, killed 1,000 to 3,000 people in the countryside to eradicate communists, many of which were Jews. Horthy would go on to declare himself regent of the new Kingdom of Hungary, a kingdom which would have no king. After the war, Italy found itself one of the victors. They joined the conflict late to promises that the Allies would give them what the Italians thought were their rightful lands across the Adriatic. However, Italy found itself stuck in brutal trench warfare in the Alps against Austria for most of the war. So in the treaties following the end of World War I, the rest of the Entente alliance supported Serbian claims over the Adriatic. Therefore, Italy was forced to only receive half of the lands they were promised. As a result of this, the people of Italy and many politicians in government blamed the Allies for cheating them from what they were promised. To pour more fuel on the fire, in 1920, at the Treaty of Sèvres, Italy lost all the territory it had occupied in mainland Turkey to Ataturk and his nationalist army. The general feeling that Italy had been cheated in its foreign policy, and because of the massive unnecessary death in the war, caused the government in Italy to become unstable. In 1922, Benito Mussolini led a coalition of fascist leaders to Rome and forced the king, Emmanuel III, to yield his government. Mussolini was appointed Prime Minister, and by 1925 he had dismantled Italy's democratic government and declared himself Deuce, meaning the leader. In 1923, the German government failed to meet its reparation payments to the Allies. In response, a coalition of Belgian and French troops invaded the Ruhr Valley to take the money through resources extracted directly from German mines and factories. The Weimar Republic started paying workers not to work in occupied areas, which ended up being the final nail in the coffin for the German economy. Prices soared for general goods as hyperinflation made the savings of the average German disappear overnight. It was in that year when the little-known National Socialist German Workers' Party, led by one Adolf Hitler, staged a coup in Munich to overthrow the Weimar government. The revolution failed and Adolf Hitler was arrested, but his party, although temporarily banned, gained a lot of publicity in the trial that followed. In prison, Hitler, with the help of his friend and colleague Rudolf Hess, wrote Mein Kampf, which went on to be a bestseller in Germany, and many disgruntled people began to agree with what the Nazi Party preached. The Nazi Party being legal again, and with Hitler freed, was still not able to gain much traction with the common German, as by 1929, the economy had recovered on the back of American loans, and everything seemed to be going well. But in that year, the American stock market crashed, causing the United States to dive into a Great Depression. They stopped giving loans to Germany and began to ask for repayment. This caused the German economy to free fall. For the average German, it was like 1923 all over again. Any positivity that the German populace held towards the Weimar Republic vanished. The Nazis were able to take advantage of the misery of the people and get 108 seats in the Reichstag. In the 1932 election, they grew this to 195. As a result, President Hindenburg, a former general in World War I, declared Hitler Chancellor. The next year, Hindenburg was dead, enabling Hitler to combine the two offices of President and Chancellor to make the new title of Führer, meaning the leader. As you might have noticed, this is eerily similar to Mussolini's coup the decade before. However, the big difference between both fascist revolutions was the one in Germany was completely legal and bloodless, to a certain degree. In the next few years, Hitler would start to build up a new German navy, mainly consisting of U-boats, a new air force called the Luftwaffe, focusing on fighter planes like the Messerschmitt, and greatly increasing the size of his army. In 1936, Hitler marched 2,000 troops into the Rhine demilitarized zone, with orders to retreat if French forces retaliated, but because of political instability in France, no one opposed them. 2 years later, on the 11th of March 1938, German troops marched into Austria unopposed. The Nazi equivalent party in Austria supported Hitler and requested that Germany annex them. On the 13th, the takeover was complete, and without a gun being fired, Austria was now part of Germany. After this, in Britain, it was clear that war was inevitable with Germany. So its Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain began a strategy called Appeasement, which in practice meant to give Germany whatever it wanted until Britain was ready for war. Think of it as a way of avoiding the inevitable until it is absolutely impossible to do so. Without Britain or France's support, Lithuania was forced to give up the previously German land of Memel to Hitler. In 1939, Czechoslovakia was forced to agree to a series of partitions, one of which was called the Vienna Award, which Germany organised. Hungary was allowed to take some of the land back which had been lost in the First World War, which increased its opinion of Germany, but Horthy still remained cautious to join the Germans fully. The face of Europe, which had changed so dramatically after World War I, had changed again. Mussolini, not wanting to be left out, annexed the Kingdom of Albania and invaded Ethiopia. Italy and Germany had now successfully made it impossible for the Second Great War to be avoided. The next action one of them takes will be the final straw and would lead to the deaths of 60 million people. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss the other installments in this series and beyond.